Well, the idea of race is inescapable in today's world. It's so prevalent that, like the air we breathe, we don't even think about it's at work at levels that are obvious. It's at work at levels that are not so obvious to us. We organize our living patterns, our marital patterns, our friendship patterns around this idea, by and large. Um, and yet, that's not always been the case. So the idea of race really comes into being roughly, depending on who you sort of dated to or which sort of movements you connected with, but roughly 400 or 500 years old now. Before that, the idea that there was something biological upon which you could segregate peoples um, was not at all widely held. The more dominant idea and the more biblical idea is this idea of what we call ethnicity. So when you read the scriptures, you nowhere in the scriptures find the Bible describing anything resembling what we would call race. That is some fundamental difference based upon biology, connected with other kinds of factors like culture and so on. But what you find in the Bible is the story of one human race, descended from Adam. And even now, if you look at the genetic science, what the genetic scientists have told us, long told us, is that race doesn't exist. There's not enough genetic variation in the human family to classify as subspecies or races. But rather, we're really close cousins. And that's really what the Bible teaches us. So you get Adam and Eve, and Eve, Genesis chapter 3, verse 21, I think, is called the mother of all living. And so that's our first parents. Then you come down to Noah and his sons, who God spares in the flood. And so from Noah and his sons and their wives descend the rest of humanity. Genesis chapter 10, the Table of Nations, tells us, when you read there, about the development of clans, languages, families. Again, what we would call ethnicity. So those are all the descendants of Noah's sons, and they're spread across the earth. And so we're being told a story not of races and discontinuity, but really of a story of unity in common humanity. Then you think about a passage like Acts chapter 17, verse 26, where Paul tells us there that God has made from the same drop of blood, or from the same parentage, all the nations of men that dwell on the earth. And so we're all descended from the same parents. So the New Testament concept too. And it's not until you come to the book of Revelation that you see why even ethnicity is ultimately important. It's because the sort of ethnic families of the earth, having been saved through Christ into one new spiritual family, that diversity redounds to God's glory. In some way, God having saved people through Christ from every tribe, family, language, kinship group in the world, that's going to multiply his glory in eternity. So the Bible is not a story about racial diversity. It's a story about ethnic diversity. And our ethnicity really is simply a kind of family kinship, an extended family kinship, not at all a story of biological difference.